Okay, Blake, you're on.
Okay, today we begin with vaYiqra, that's Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 1. For any of those of you listening in that know we were further down, the recorders have not been working. They are now, so we're going to just start over since we're not that far into this one. So, verse 1 begins very traditionally, Vayedaber Yahweh Moshe El Moshe Lemor. And you guys, of course, know what that means. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, and of course, you do realize, for those of you who have been with me a while, that that's the beginning of a new section. That's why that's in there. It's very specifically, think of it as a new chapter. So some of the chapters start like this, some of them don't, and they should, because there's always going to be a sentence like this to tell you that it's a new subject. That's not really the right way to put that. It's not a new subject of holiness. In 19, we're the subject of holiness, and we're still on holiness. This is just a different part of the holiness look. It, it's a little different, not a lot different though. So, very literally in English, your verse 2 says, and to children Israel shall say, man, man, from children Israel and from the stranger that dwell in Israel, that he gives seed Moloch, dead he dies, people he stone he eat with stone. That sounds pretty bad. Um, I'm not going to go through all of these words here, but I do want to talk about the important ones. Well, they're all important, but you know what I mean. The ones that we really need to know what they mean. Like Hager, that stranger. It's a sojourner, a temporary visitor, a foreigner, a person living out of his own country, a visitor to your country. What do we call that? I don't know if we have a word for that. Anyway, the Septuagint used a very interesting Greek word for this. They used the word proselutos, proselyte, proselyte, uh, proselyte. Do we know what a proselyte is? A proselyte is somebody who is converting to Judaism in this case, because it's the Bible, it's about the Jews, to the Jews, for the Jews, about the Jews, and so on and so forth. So it's Jewish proselytes. And then it's Hagar. So we have the Hager, Hey Gimel Resh, and Hagar, Hey Gimel Resh. It's the same word. But in this case, it's going to be of to turn aside from the way, hence to turn aside from anyone, to tarry anywhere. As a sojourner, a stranger of individuals, it's you're hanging out somewhere. A temporary dweller, someone who's just in your country for a little while, you get it? They're the same word and have the same meaning. Just because the sound changes, the fundamental meaning doesn't. And so when you look these up, let's see, do they have different? Yeah, they have totally different numbers because when Strong's did this, him not knowing Hebrew really at all, he gave Hager the number 1616, and then he gave the word Hagar 1481, like they're two different words. And he gives essentially two different meanings. And it's really not right. If you're a sojourner, if you're a visitor to a country, you're dwelling there. And the idea of you being a visitor is that you're dwelling somewhere. You're a temporary, that's why they say temporary dweller. And then it says, Beg Yisrael, so temporary dwelling in Israel. Yitan, which is give. Oops, I skipped one here. Mi zaro, that is of sowing, hence seed time, the time of sowing. So it's seed, right? Planting seed. La Molech. We call him Moloch. The thing about Hebrew names, a lot of people don't know. It's the same in Greek, by the way. Never really thought about that in Latin. I've not looked that up, and I can read it and know what it means, but I've not really thought about it in those terms at any point when I was reading Latin, which I was doing just last week. We take someone like Pilato, Pilatos, Pilaton. That would be three different names to us. Pilate, Pontius Pilate. I'm doing this in the Greek. Hebrew does the same thing. Adam, Edom, Edom, all of that. To simplify for us English speakers, we just use one word. So Molech, Malach, all the different ways that that name shows up in Hebrew, you think of that as Moloch. Just like all the different ways I said Adam, you think of it as Adam. And all the different ways, what was the word I was saying a while ago? Oh, Pilate. We just say Pilate because I'm not Roberto, Roberto, whatever, I just have the one name, right? So that's what the Bible does in the English translations. They'll give you that one name all the time. It's like Josephus, his name was Joseph. But there's so many other people named Joseph, and there was one in particular that was very famous in his time, the father of Yeshua. So they would call him Josephus, right? But his name is Joseph. I'm trying to think of some other famous Josephs that are like Joseph, not the stepfather of Yeshua, but Joseph, the rabbi that taught Yeshua. Do you guys know that's in the New Testament? Of course you don't, because the translators didn't know these were two different men. Anyway, so you follow, right? That's what happens in the Bible. So when the name, we say Aaron in English, Aharon in Hebrew, when that name is changed up because of the sentence structure, it would throw a lot of people off, so they simplify it. So Moloch is who we're talking about. That's a false god, by the way. One of the more popular idols of Moloch was with the hands out like this, and that was the fire was right underneath it, and then they would take their firstborn child and throw it on that altar. That's what those hands made, was the altar, because the fire was burning below. And then they beat drums real loud to drown out the sound of the babies screaming from being burned alive. So the seed, we're talking about the babies. When the seed are given to Moloch, and that's one of the Natan in given. How would they write that particular word this time around? Boy, they talk about a different one that has a lot of Yi-10 is how it's spelled here instead of Natan, because that makes it masculine. Natan is the root verb, and then Yi-10 makes it he gave or he gives. It's really gave because it's in the past tense. But anyone who has given Mizaro his seed, La Molech to Moloch, Mut Yumat, die he die. Okay, this is a Hebrew idiom. If you take this literally, it's like he will die the death, because if you say the same word twice, it's like putting an exclamation point, because there were no punctuation. There was no punctuation in Hebrew in this time. In fact, there wasn't any in the first century. In fact, there wasn't any in Greek in the first century. So if you're reading a Greek text that has punctuation in it, you're not reading the real Greek text. You're reading a translation of the Greek text. But I digress. So this is Mut Yumat. In this case, this is literally die he die. but that is a Hebrew idiom. I'll talk about that in a minute. Then it says, Am haaretz, the people of the land, the people who live in the land, which that's, if you say Am haaretz now, that's a derogatory term about certain people, but was not in the Bible. In the Bible days, that was not derogatory. It was just speaking of the Jews. Then we have Yir Gemuhu, which is literally he joined together they. So they will join together is how we would say that. Va'aven, which is from that word Evan, which is stone. A stone of any kind, whether it's rough or polished, large or small, makes no difference. You could say it of a pebble, of a stone the size of a mountain. It makes no difference. Evan. Okay, so die, he die, and then it's, I thought that a stone was in there twice. Together, Laban. Nope, that's all I have. Okay, so here's the translation, and you'll start picking up on the idiom here in a moment. And say to Bnei Yisrael, say to the children of Israel, anyone, I skipped over this part, but it said ish, ish, man, man. When you say man, man, you're not saying any man, because that's not what's happening here. We're saying anyone. When they say ish, ish, it's anyone, one to another, together. That's the way that word, when it's said twice, that is an exception to the rule of the explanation point, if you know what I mean. So, and say to the children of Israel, anyone of the sons of Israel, B'nai Yisrael again, and of the proselytes. Remember, proselytos. Yeah, I couldn't think of the word. Any of the proselytes who dwell in Israel, who give of their children to Moloch. Remember, he die, mut, yamut. Here's what that means. They are to be excommunicated. Die, he die. Excommunicate him. The people of the land will for some reason this stone is not in here twice, but it is in the Hebrew twice. I don't know how I missed that. But so it says, he stoned they in a stone. You cannot stone a human being inside a stone, right? You should know this is an idiom. So what does that mean? The people of the land will get together, and what will they do? They will chisel his name and the offense he has committed in a stone. That's what he stoned they in a stone means. This is laws full of idioms, right? Very common ones, by the way, that's throughout the Hebrew Bible. Ish, ish means anyone. Die, he die means excommunicate. He stoned they in a stone means that his offense will be chiseled in a stone. So let's talk about the context here. Oh, I forgot we could do that. We're back to the normal studio stuff. I forgot I could turn toward the other camera. Anyway, so die, he die. How do I know this is excommunication? Well, that's going to become really clear a couple of verses from now, because God's going to do this to the guy and God's going to do that to the guy, and God can't do that if he's dead. All right? So you'll pick up on that soon enough. We know it's excommunication. What is the absolute worst thing that could ever happen to a human being in this time period? Let's go back and let's think of it in terms of that. I'll bring it into the modern days in a moment. But in this time period, if you lived in what's called a city or a town in your Bible, you lived in a very small little village. And most of the people in that village are your relatives. It's going to be made up of your parents, your siblings, your cousins, your children, your grandchildren, all of those people are going to live together in this little area. And they're basically mostly all farmers, unless you live in town. And so if you're excommunicated from your family, your people, your town, your nation, that's about as dead as you can get in the mind of the biblical Hebrew. That is complete death. So that's where that idea comes from. And then the chiseling of the stone, this was very common. It goes all the way back to Mesopotamia for sure. It may have existed before that. I don't really know for sure, but that's going back a long way. In the entrance of a town, particularly if it's more not rural, but what do you call that when you more like what you think of as a city? You have businesses and houses that are connected together and stuff like that, like kind of like apartments or condos or things like that. I don't know if you guys knew that, but in the biblical world, when they did finally start living in houses, they shared walls. The one house would be built, and then they'd build the next house, and the wall would be connected to it. And it was almost everybody did that, and that's what would become what we would think of as cities. So when you entered into that area, there would generally be a fence around it because they needed protection from people who would do them harm. And they had these stones at the entrance of their villages, their little cities. And I mean, calling them a city is a little bit out there, I think, but let's call it a city. But when you entered in, there would be chiseled in the stone would have the rules of that city. You will not kill, you will not steal, whatever the rules of that city were. And then the people who essentially weren't allowed into that city, their names would be chiseled in that stone. That's what's actually being said here. But it's not really what the idiom means. That's a literal usage of this idiom. What the idiom means is it's the difference between remembering something you said and typing it into your computer and saving it to your hard drive. It's to make it permanent. The whole idea of chiseling in stone is to make it permanent. Because if you write this stuff out on parchment can burn, parchment can get wet and fall apart, and was not smooth like paper back in this time. It was very volatile, if you will. And then if you wrote it on lambskin, it would fade, and eventually you wouldn't even be able to read it. So the idea of permanence was connected to, it comes from that idea of even, of stone, of chiseling into a stone. That makes it permanent. Okay. Onkelos's vaYiqra by Drauzina Wagner said, and I quote, Am haaretz in modern Hebrew, the phrase is frequently used to discharge a single individual as a fool or ignorant person. However, in biblical Hebrew, the term means people of the land and refers to the general community. I thoroughly agree with that because there is no inkling of that being a disparaging remark to the children of Israel in the Bible. You'll find nothing like that in there. But you certainly, if you hang around Jews long enough, if I hang around Jews long enough, someone's going to call me that. I'm just saying. All right, so verse 3, very literally in English. And I give faces my in man the he means these, and cut off with he from midst people he, for seed he gave Moloch to purpose unclean, sanctuary me, and to defile name holy me. Some of you may have already picked up that we're already going to show you how I know this is excommunication and not actually death. It's right here. I think it comes up in another verse or two as well, but it's certainly here. I didn't realize it was that quick. So, and this is God talking at this point. Va'ani, and I, eten, I will give, because they took Natan and put an aleph in front of it. And when you do that, that's I will. So, and I will give. So I will give. God's going to give to this dead man somehow. Et panai, I will give my face to this. Well, ba'ish, I will give my face to this man. These men, let's put it that way, because that next thing was hahu, so these men. VaYiqra. So this is where, beyond any shadow of a doubt, we know that die he die cannot possibly mean that this person is literally supposed to be put to death. I will cut him off. Wait a minute, he's dead. That's about as cut off as it gets, right? You follow my thinking here. To cut off as part of a garment, the branch of a tree, to kill. So God's going to kill the dead man? To destroy persons, to make a covenant. What? So used from, they get the idea of making a covenant because that's from the idea of slaying an animal. I'm going to make a covenant out of this man. No. Because it says, oh, going to make a covenant of this guy. Nah, it's not what's happening. I'm going to cut him off. Well, that could mean, he dies and then God gives him everlasting death. That's how God kills a dead man, right? Because I actually thought about that when I said it. Okay, but God said, I'm going to cut him off, mi kerev, from the midst amo of my people. Well, dead's pretty cut off from the people, don't you think? Hopefully you guys are following what I'm trying to lay down here. Die, he die. Mut, yamut, yomat, mat, yemat. I know it ends in mot. Yamut, yamut. Sorry, I went blank there. Mut, yamut, die, he die. And God's going to cut him off from the midst of the people after they kill him with stones? No. That would have cut him off from the people pretty permanently there, right? Ki mi zaro, that's that word for seed. We're speaking of children, so we're not talking about planting seeds in the ground. We're just calling his children seed. Natan, because he gave his seed la molech, to Moloch. It says la ma'an, so that's the because part. They say it after, Jews say it after, you Americans say it different. Tameh, unclean. This is impure. This is unclean. Et mikdashi. Wow. That means that his sanctuary has become unclean. God's sanctuary has become unclean because either one of his children, one of the Jews, or one of their proselytes has sacrificed their child to Moloch. Then it says, ulechalev. That's to defile. Et Shem. Defile the name. Defile the, remember a name, Shem, that's actually authority, more authority than name, rarely ever actually used for name, more often than not used of authority, even though your English translations didn't pick up on that. Stop in the name of the law, right? Stop by the authority of the law. I mean, we get that from the Bible because the word Shem actually means authority, but is used for name because your name represents who you are, your authority. Maybe you don't have any authority. Well, that's still your authority. No authority. Just saying. Then it says, Kadashi, my holiness, holy mine. So here's our translation. And I will turn against. Where'd you get turned against, Rob? Well, he said, I'm going to give my face to that man. That's an idiom. And I will turn against this man and will cut him off from the midst of his people. Now, it actually said that because he gave his child to Moloch, such that my sanctuary is unclean, or because my, I shouldn't have said such, because my sanctuary is unclean and my holy authority is defiled. What do you mean his authority was defiled? Well, he just gave you the law. That's his authority over your life, right? The law, God is the law. Something one of the Rabbim who wrote the New Testament really understood and actually said it better than any sage I've ever read. But he said, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was in God. God was the Word. And he's right about that. God is the Torah. The Torah is the Word. In the beginning was the Torah. The Torah was in God. That's who he was. And God is the Torah. He's the law. You've heard guys say that. I'm the law around here. Well, to the Jew, God is the law around here. Are you following me here? So when these people give their children to Moloch, they have defiled his authority. That's what it's meant by that. Verse 2 used the phrase, die he die. And here in verse 3, the phrase, and cut off he from midst people he, are both idiomatic phrases. I think I've already said all that. Thus, no, I haven't. I was wondering why I was saying this twice. That's a note to myself here. Okay, so verse 2 used the phrase, mut yamut, which is die he die. And here in this verse, verse 3, it uses the phrase, and cut off he from midst people he. They are both idiomatic phrases that mean exactly the same thing. In fact, this is how we know they're idioms in Hebrew, because the one explains the other. If you're looking for, how do you know all these idioms, Rob? Well, if you understood how to read Hebrew, you would understand that when they're going to give you an idiom, they're going to there's two ways to do it. They're either going to tell you what the idiom means and follow that with the idiom, or they're going to give you the idiom and follow that with the meaning. It's that simple. So when you read something that seems like a repeat, or maybe it doesn't, there's some that don't seem like a repeat. God says that the explanation of the idiom, he gives it first and says, you give your tithe before you give anything else. And then you get the idiom. It's like seething a kid in its mother's milk. Give it a minute. I'm going to let this one sink in for you. Yes, God did not tell us that we can't put cheese on a hamburger, which I don't do. I don't like hamburgers. And I'm allergic to milk, so I don't eat cheese unless it's goat cheese. I can actually eat goat cheese. I just cannot have cow stuff. Okay, so I don't do that. I'm not sure if I would do, knowing the law, knowing that it's not against the law to put cheese on a burger, what I'm trying to tell you is I might do that. It's okay for you to do that as long as you know that the reason why you do it is because it's not sinful to put cheese on a burger, because it explained the idiom being, it's like seething a kid in its mother's milk. It's, how would we say that in English? We have an idiom. It's right on the edge of my brain there of how you would say something like that. It's like cutting your nose off to spite your face. That's literally the same idiom as like seething a kid in its mother's milk. God has provided everything that you ever needed and you're boiling yourself, the kid in the mother's milk. You get it? You're the kid. So that idiom doesn't sound anything like what you would think that idiom means. Just like die, he die, you think, okay, well, someone's going to die here. And clearly, nobody's going to die here. Why would God cut somebody off from the midst of the people if he's dead? How would he do it? It makes no sense, right? But we have two idioms that mean exactly the same thing. And this is important because going through the rest of this chapter, sometimes they're going to say that he's cut off from the midst of the people. Sometimes it's going to say, die, he dies. Sometimes it's going to say that his name will be chiseled in stone, which is not exactly the same thing, but you understand it's kind of close. You're not allowed to go into the town if your name's been chiseled in stone. But if you've been cut off, and your name is chiseled in stone, you are utterly dead. So essentially, when I think about it, that's three idioms that mean exactly the same thing. And that is not uncommon in Hebrew, especially biblical Hebrew. You'll find that happens an awful lot. So I should move on. What else did I have to say here? Verses 2 through 5 are actually one very long sentence. You need to know this. In English, we have this aversion to run-on sentences, is what we call them. They're very long sentences. Bible Hebrew, does not have that problem. Our sentence is not finished until the thought is finished. So a sentence could last for what we would think of as an entire book. And doesn't it make sense given that we didn't have punctuation, that it might turn out that way? So what you have here, verses 2 through 5 are a single verse in Hebrew. And it's really important that we keep all of these together or we're going to start taking things out of context. All right. Then Onkelos's vaYiqra by Drazin and Wagner also said he describes the worship of the idol Moloch as a popular and widespread practice. I don't know who the he is. I didn't give myself that note. Somebody describes the worship of Moloch as a popular and widespread practice still prevalent during his lifetime in the 12th century. So it's probably Maimon. Well, I don't know. Most of them came out of the 12th century. Its adherents, they say, used all kinds of psychological pressures and threats and pandered to the superstitious fears of uneducated mothers who were especially susceptible, which is total nonsense. And let me finish their quote. Since these mothers, the caretakers, were the caretakers of the children, they, being the caretakers of the children, tended to weaken before the idolaters' cunning onslaught. They gave up their children to be burned to the idol. The law makes, therefore, an earnest stand against this practice and use in reference to its stronger term than any other kind of idolatry, namely, he defiles my sanctuary and profanes my holy name. Okay, the nonsensical part of that is about the woman. This is something that the husband and the wife did together. And the reason why you did that is because, again, going back to the village thing, everybody's living in this little village. This is your mother, your siblings, your children, your grandchildren, cousins, second cousins. We all live in this same place. And if you don't sacrifice that oldest child to Moloch, you know what happens if the rains don't come this year? Your entire family will be put to death, and you'll be the last one. So it wasn't about weak women. Good Lord. Okay, let's move on to 4. Very literally in English. And if hide he hide they, people the land, eyes them from the man, the he, which would be these, in give he seed Moloch, to not me kill with he. So if halem, that's to hide, to conceal, to look the other way, to ignore. to, let's just not talk about that. Then it's Yalimu. So it's the same word, but they've added something to the front and the end. He, hi, they. So when we say they hide, we say he, hi, they. Literally, because you're adding the masculine beginning to the word, and then you're adding the plural ending to it. So it becomes literally he, hide, they. So Yalimu. The people. If the people ignore this, if the people turn their eyes away from this, if the people pretend it didn't happen, if the people lie for this guy, that's where we are so far. Haaretz, if the people of the land, the Jews, the proselytes, et enehem, from their eyes. That's how I know what it means. If they hide it from their eyes, that's to, I didn't see anything. I don't know nothing. I didn't say a word. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That's how you hide something from your eyes. You lie by omission, or you just outright lie, or you just ignore it, whatever. You're hiding it from your eyes. And then, of course, it's from this man who's done this thing, if you will. The fact that he has given his seed to Moloch, levilti, such that hamit, that's to make dead, that's the same word, mut, oto, him, or it could be the baby. We shall find out. Here's my translation. And if the Am Haaretz, if the people of the land hide they eyes from them, if they ignore it, if they, let's just say surely ignore it, because there's got to be something more powerful than just ignore. So if the people surely ignore, because hide they eyes them is an idiom. This man who gave his child to Moloch such that they do not make dead he, that they do not excommunicate him. That's all I have for that one. Oh, I got time. I feel like I'm talking more than normal, and time should have already run out, and I'm looking up and the time's good, and something keeps happening to my computer here. I can't get it to go away. There it goes. Okay. So what are we? Verse 5. Literally it says, and establish me I faces my in man the he, and in family he, and cut off with he, and all the adulterers after his to adultery after the Moloch from midst peoples. Ooh, this is rough. This is Psalm T. And that's to establish. That is to put, to set, to place. I'm going to set my foot down. I am going to establish something. I am going to found something. Ani, so I'm going to do it. Panai, that's the face. So generally it's going to be an idiom if you're using this word. Panai, Baish. I'm going to set my face with that man or in that man, or ba, very, mostly it's in, sometimes you say with, but every once in a while, the bait being added to the front of a word means against. And if it's of the face, we know that the bait means against. I'm going to set my face against that man or these men. That's because there probably be more than one that does this. Then it says, U v'mishpachto. Got X in there. That's funny. And in family he. Yike. I'm going to set my face. I'm going to turn my face against that man or those men, I should say, and their families. Wow. vaYiqra, and cut off, and cut off them, and cut them off. Die, they die. Excommunicate, they will be excommunicated. God is going to do it. If the people won't, God's going to do it. And I don't think that's going to bode well for that man and his family. Ve'et and all ha-zonim, and every person who commits fornication with Moloch, everyone who sacrifices their child to an idol. In this case, Moloch is being used here. But that doesn't mean that it's just specifically Moloch. Because what did Moloch represent? What was that idol all about? It was about the sacrifice of innocent children. So any sacrifice of innocent children, that person is called an adulterer. That person who does it, that is among the children of Israel, whether they are the children of Israel or proselytes of the children of Israel, if they are sacrificing their innocent babies, they are adulterers against God. And that person's family who did it, that person and that person's family, I do know that I do realize it's being said man, but remember, Hebrew is written in the masculine. So if it's the woman doing it by herself, it's the same thing. God is going to turn against that person and their entire family. Why? Well, isn't that exactly what Moloch worship is? You sacrifice the child to save your family. In God's world, you sacrifice the child, you destroy your family. You see the difference? Then it says, Acharav. Oh man, that's the family after him. Your name is going to be wiped from the face of the earth. There will be no generations following your generation. Oh, but I've already got 6 kids and they've already got several kids. Yeah, it's not going to last long. Because if the people won't cut this person off, and by cut off, it's not like you're killing them. You're not picking up a stone. You're not putting them in a stone and then trying to stone them to death while they're somehow in that stone. That's what the word said, right? No. You just can't live among God's people. And you can't go back. This is permanent. And it's going to go to all of your descendants. There's no coming back to God. Li zanot. It's adultery. All the adulterers. In this case, to the adulterers. Achare. All of the adulterers after Hamolach. Well, it says Molech, but Moloch, you get it. Mi kerev. From midst, Amam, of the peoples. Okay. Then I will set my attention against, my face with or my face in, I will set my attention against that man and his family and will excommunicate him and all adulterers like him who commit adultery with Moloch from the midst of their people. Didn't really write that out very well in English, did I? Because it's all the family members. It's all the family members of the adulterer that are going to be cast out from the midst of the people from now on. Onkelos said, this is Drauzina Wagner, did the family sin so that they should also be punished? Doesn't Deuteronomy 24:16 forbid killing children for their parents' sin? During the Roman period, tax collectors were probably considered the same as robbers. They were properly considered the same as robbers. Tax collectors were called robbers. Of course, this is written 1,000 years later, but I'm sure they knew. Anyway, it's probably true. They weren't very favorable about them in the New Testament, and that was written a lot closer to that time. So yeah, they might be right about that. Then it goes on, where all of them are, where it says all of them are not, in a sense, tax collectors. Should be worse, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I was just copying what they wrote. Anyway, for they all protected him. Why was it necessary to repeat this information? Why is God saying this again? He's already said this. Sifra, paraphrased by Rashi, which is generally bothered by such seemingly unnecessary repetitions. Why is it repeated here? Many sages see a different instruction each time that the words are repeated. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. These guys who wrote this didn't have a lot to work with. They did not speak Hebrew. Rashi, Maimon, those people did not speak Hebrew. Period. End of story. They did not speak Hebrew. They did not think like a Jew. They did not live like a Jew. Nobody knew what a Jew was. They didn't know what Judaism was. They knew literally nothing about the Bible. So what did they do, being Jewish born? Well, they got the Onkelos. Now, the Onkelos stripped away all Jewish thought, all Jewish history. But these sages did not know that. So they go in there and they read the Onkelos, which is very literal, and they take everything literal. And they're saying, Deuteronomy says you can't kill the children for something some father did. Well, this verse didn't say that, did it? Because they didn't know that Hebrew has a lot of idioms in it. And Onkelos didn't even recognize, there's like 4 idioms that Onkelos recognized in his whole work. It's not a bad work, I'm not saying that, but it's not a good one either. I will say that. So these people don't know what Judaism is. They have to invent it. They have to make it up. And frankly, they stole a lot of it from the Christians. Well, the Catholics. Christians didn't exist in their time. Christianity came about in the 1500s. So all you had was Catholicism between the mid 300s is when it really started, but they didn't even have a name, let alone a pope, until the mid 400s. So Catholicism really goes from the 400s. Yes, it did get started in the 3, but it wasn't really a religion until the 400s. And so they're still going strong into the 1200s when these men said all this stuff. And these men did not know much of anything. They didn't have anything to work with. So as much as I really want to get on them about some of the dumb things they say, like, oh, these repeats are new laws. No, they're not. If you want to understand why the Bible has so much repeating in it, go read Cassuto. Umberto Moshe Cassuto. He explains it better than anyone else. He wrote a commentary on Genesis and Exodus. Unfortunately, he passed before he could finish. I think he actually may have written the commentary on the rest of the Torah. He just didn't get it out as a book before he passed. And I don't really know for sure. But just read those 2 commentaries. I can tell you that he goes into great detail about it, about how the rules of grammar and how they came about and how he knows what the rules of grammar are and how, all of that's explained in the documentary hypothesis that he wrote. But that's a very hard thing for most people to understand. You're talking about things you've never heard of before. Get the book if you want to. The best way to understand why there's so much repeating in the Bible is just to read Umberto Moshe Cassuto. Read his commentary on the Genesis and Exodus, and you'll fully get that these are not new laws. They are the same laws. One of the things that came about from the writing style that was utilized in the Torah was that you get an overview, you get the detail, you get a summary. Lots of repeating. Then if that's not enough, there's no such thing as chronological order among the Jews in the biblical period. Even if you go all the way to the first century and add the New Testament stuff and call that the biblical period, chronology still didn't exist among the Jews at all. Did it exist? Well, yeah, the Romans certainly had chronology, but Jews did not. So things were connected by topic. That's not the right word. Association. So if you're going through and you're talking about something and all of a sudden some story winds up in there that's way out of chronological order, which happens a lot in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, right? Also in the New Testament, because it was written in the same style. Wonder how I know that. Christians don't know that, but I've read the thing. I can tell you it was written in the same style as the Torah. Things are out of chronological order on purpose because it's connected by association, not chronology. So that means that even though you've been given the overview, the detail, the summation, that stuff may show up 2 or 3 more times because it's associated to something else. Lots of repeating. It was on purpose. It's not a mistake. They are not new laws. That little rant cost me the rest of my teaching today. I ran out of time. Shalom and shalom, everybody.
The blessing, Be'ivrit. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yish merecha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.